this edition of I-24 News Defense Magazine. I'm unmanned David with your weekly review of strategic affairs, security, intelligence, and more. In this edition, Jerusalem's street terror is once again surging. What should be done to keep civilians safe? What does the surge in China's defense budget mean for global security? And a deeper look at Israel's unmanned combat aerial vehicle. Let's begin. Tensions in Jerusalem are once again on the rise. Since last October, the city has seen a spate of deadly attacks of seemingly unorganized vehicles, terror, stabbing, and stone throwing. And while political tensions run high, armed Palestinian police was allowed for the first time to take positions in the outskirts of Jerusalem. Before we discuss all that, here's the latest. In the studio is David Tzur, former MK, commander of the Israeli Police Elite Counterterrorism Unit, former commander of Israel's Border Police, and a leading security expert. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Milan.
What are we seeing in Jerusalem? Is this a new intifada, a silent intifada, some would call it?
Well, I don't think it's a silent intifada, but it's definitely, we see ups and downs since, I think, last maybe June. And we see, depending politically, depend on some of the incidents. I can't say that it's organized. It's not like what we saw maybe 15 years ago when the second intifada started, that it wasn't spontaneously. It was more organized by an organization. I don't see any motivation from the Palestinian Authority to motivate it, but I don't see either any motivation to stop it.
Is there a way for Israeli security forces to stop attacks like the vehicle attacks?
Well, definitely it's very complicated and it's not easy. I don't get the theory which saying that this kind of events are unstoppable in a way of preventing them, because if we see most of the incidents, there is kind of a historical activities of those guys in terrorism or in the website or in other activities. Some of them are clean, coming clean, which decided at the moment, so it's very difficult to intercept it. But we have circles of security. So when we're talking about, and you see that the last incidents mostly are police officers. So this is the second circle of security. The military, the blockades from the West Bank, and also in Jerusalem, it's the bodyguard police or police officers. And maybe the third circle is the private security. And if we're looking strategically what's happening in Jerusalem, it's more trying to put flames on maybe the frozen political situation.
But before we go to private security, the concept of a unified Jerusalem is almost sacred for the Israeli government. Should there be separation between the Palestinian and Israeli populations of Jerusalem?
Well, this is a political decision which definitely this government, and I don't think any government, is ready to take it.
Outside the political question, should we need some barrier between a person that decides to take a car and drive into West Jerusalem and attack Jews?
I don't think we can avoid ourselves to blockade all the East Jerusalem. There are Israeli citizenships in a way, and they are allowed to go any place. Definitely, it's a huge challenge, but we can do more barricades, we can do more security, and I'm a great fan of the going into those areas and not only staying outside.
Enforcing the law inside those neighborhoods.
Exactly. The fractions inside these territories is a huge issue, which we can see a lot of arguments. Some saying that it's contrary, it motivates violence. But I say for the long run, if we put police officers, we put stations there, we can do more for the security.
And you mentioned private security. You are going to chair the upcoming Israeli Security Conference. What room, what place should be given to private security companies?
Thank you for asking this. On the 18th of May, we're going to do this conference. This is a very large conference, which is aiming mainly to the security offices of private organizations, governmental organizations, and how to combine private security with the national security, which either by regulation or by coordination.
Because the world is moving more towards privatization of security?
Exactly. We are not in a position like maybe Americans, and we saw I think only last week or something, that there was a verdict on the Whitewater, the Prince.
The company that was hired in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, which was a huge issue. We are not there because outside of the Israel, all the security is done by military. But definitely inside, we have to move one step even forward and do more private security.
Retired Deputy Commissioner David Tzur, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
In recent months, China has been expanding its military power and increasing its security budget. And while some consider these steps parts of China's technological evolution, others view them as concern. Lauren Iso has more.
China's military has been growing at an unprecedented rate, increasing in manpower, expanding its weapons arsenal, and its global presence. While the East Asian country's economy has been facing a drastic decline, over the past 5 years, China's arms exports have grown by 143%, making it the world's third largest arms trader. China's neighbors such as India, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, and the Philippines have become uneasy about Beijing beefing up its military power.
The question of it escalating to something beyond everybody's control is always should be on the top of the minds of all world leaders.
Beijing's growing military and stubborn policy over islands in the East China Sea disputed with Japan could ignite an arms race across Asia. Beijing's defense budget is 3.6 times larger than Tokyo, and Japan is beginning to worry about its neighbors' intentions. U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter, on a diplomatic visit to Tokyo last month, pledged allegiance to Japan and vowed to support them in their territorial claims.
We confirmed the U.S. stance on the Senkaku Islands, and we agreed to oppose any change to the status quo of the balance of power in the East China Sea.
We don't, as we frequently say, take a stand in any of those territorial disputes. We take a strong stand against militarization of those disputes.
China's government urged the United States to act and speak cautiously following Carter's statement.
We urge the United States to speak and act cautiously, keep its promise to take no sides on the issue of territorial ownership, and take more actions to benefit the regional peace and stability.
China's defense spending is expected to rise this year by 10.1%, marking 27 years of double-digit or near double-digit increases.
To further discuss China's global and regional defense impact, we are joined now by Samir Saran, Senior Fellow and Vice President at the Observer Research Foundation, an Indian-based think tank. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Saran. We've seen recent reports that China has increased its defense budget while the rest of its economy isn't growing. Should this be a concern for the rest of the region?
So let me actually just start by saying it's not just the region, but it's also other actors who are interested in the region who are looking at this particular development. And also, I think the economy is growing. It's not growing as fast. To people who are living in that part of the world, like India, it is perhaps expected that China would expand its military capacities and therefore spend more on its military expenditure. But at the same time, the nature of its expenses and the nature of its investments in certain kinds of defense postures is what's going to be interesting to many people.
What are the geopolitical implications of a stronger China military, not only for the region, but also for perhaps the Western world, United States, for example?
Well, I think the Chinese buildup is clearly a part of its response to being dominated in the Western Pacific. So I think China is the breakout nation. It believes that it has the right to defend its interests. It believes it has significant interests in both the Indo-Pacific as well as in other parts of the world. And certainly, sometimes you're going to see contests vis-a-vis China and the United States of America. You're certainly going to see some tensions between China and its smaller neighbors. And at some point, when it becomes a predominant force in the Indian Ocean, you're going to see a little bit of a face-off between India and China as well. But this is expected, and I believe it's from these contests and tensions that you will eventually see new rules emerge, reflecting the new realities. China is a big power. India would be soon a big power as well. And the Atlantic system that has dominated most of the rules and governance frameworks will need to yield, will need to change.
We know, of course, that an increased Chinese defense budget might spur also other countries in the region to increase their budgets. What about India, for example, as a regional power? Does this hinder India's status as an Asian superpower?
So I think there are three actors who are going to be most concerned about this build-up in the region. First is Japan, their Pacific neighbor. And what Japan does is going to be interesting to watch. So the question to be asked is Japan confident of the US alliance? If it is, and it is confident of the US protecting its interests, you might see a modest response. Otherwise, I believe you could see Japan really responding in kind. The second country that's going to be concerned about this build-up is Australia, because it has huge trading relations with China, but at the same time, it is an alliance partner of the United States of America, and how they respond is another very interesting development to watch out for. And finally, India. I believe the Indian Ocean region still is an area where China is only beginning to make its presence felt. It might be a decade or so before they become a significant player, but I certainly believe India is going to be concerned, and India is going to be responding.
When we look at other countries participating or cooperating with Asian superpowers such as China, such as India, of course here in Israel we talk a lot about the Israeli-Indian defense relations or security-based relations. Are these relations as strong as they used to be?
No, I think this relationship is a very interesting inflection point. Israel enjoyed multiple years of being the only advanced, modern, Western weapon system supplier to India. We were relying mostly on Russian systems. So Israel had a interesting run where they built up a lot of interesting partnerships with India. Today, there are two opportunities, challenges in the relationship. One is that can Israel capitalize on India's invitation to make with India in the defense sector? So can Israel make India its manufacturing base? Can Israel use India to gain the size and scale that some of its companies may want to? On the other hand, India today has opportunities to procure from the United States, from most of the European countries, alongside its traditional suppliers like Russia. And in that sense, Israel will face competition there as well. And let me not understate the fact that in a few years' time, India itself will be a competent defense manufacturer. And so it's an interesting landscape right now for Israel. I believe if it plays its cards right, it could actually use the Indian opportunity to scale up its operations rather than remain modest subsystem supplier, which it currently is.
Mr. Saran, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you alone.
One example of Israeli and Indian defense cooperation is IAI Harop, an unmanned combat aerial vehicle with the ability to autonomously detect and attack. I-24 News' Maxime Perez went to check it out.
Welcome to the hangars of the Israel Aerospace Industries. This is where the IAI operates its Harop production line. The Harop is more than a combat drone, it is a kamikaze drone. Its mission, circling over a combat zone to better spot and neutralize targets.
And in our system, we launch the weapon from its canister, and it flies as an airborne platform, gathering the intelligence, and eventually, at the end, when the operator desires for, he can aim and hit the target at his need.
Israel has shown interest in kamikaze drones since the late 80s. After years of research and development, the IAI engineers conceived a multi-purpose weapon costing less than the combined use of a surveillance drone along with a fighter jet or helicopter to destroy the target.
We give the customer an affordable solution because we combine into the system also the capability for gathering information, electro-optical by the seeker, the electro-optical seeker, And at the end, we give him a weapon system which can hit the target very precise.
3 countries have already purchased several Harop unmanned air vehicles: India, Turkey and even Germany, which reportedly used it in Afghanistan. For its part, the Israeli Air Force wishes to use the combat drone to counter the powerful Russian-made S-300 anti-aircraft missile system, a system Iran has its eyes on to protect its nuclear facilities. The Harop is a long-range aircraft able to fly as far as 1,000 kilometers from its airbase. With its 2-meter length and its 3-meter wingspan, the Harop might play a key role in a potential conflict with the Lebanese organization of Hezbollah and its arsenal of rocket launchers.
That's all we have time for. Be sure to visit us again next week for another edition of I-24 News Defense. For all the latest headlines, log on to www.i24news.tv. Have a safe night from Jaffa Port.